So there's a need for an executive session today under CRS 246402, parens 4, parens B, legal advice conference. Board to conference with an attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific matters. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Is this for the non-renewals?
I believe so.
Mr. Farrow, is it for the non-renewals?
I'm anticipating that you'll have some specific questions about process that I can answer for you.
Okay, any other discussion?
President Archuleta, will you turn on your mic?
It's on? It's on? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now, Cameron?
There it is.
We good?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion properly made and seconded. Any other discussion? Roll call, Monique, please.
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Dr. Hyde?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
So for the record, let the record show us we at 4:05, we go into executive session. All right, are we ready? Sorry for the late meeting. We had a little bit of stuff we needed to take care of. So we're here for the study session to kind of get an agenda prepared for Tuesday. So, you know, this is our opportunity to ask questions about what it is we need questions answered. And thank you for all of your participation in being here to answer these questions. So can we get started? Your water? Oh, is this yours? Because I don't have water. This isn't mine. I have Kool-Aid. So Tuesday, we'll do the preliminary stuff, discussion with superintendent's recommendation, personnel actions. That'll be item number 1. Is everybody okay with all of that? Is there any discussion? Okay. So then we'll move on to classified, let's move on to 1.2. Superintendent's recommendation approval to renew the Barracuda service contracts. Brandon? Do we have any concerns or questions for Brandon about the Barracuda service contracts? We're good with that?
I apologize for not having my notes with me. And I can't pull this up on my, right here, okay. Okay, thanks. This is a messaging, a phone messaging. The Barracuda is what?
So on this, good evening, by the way. On this, we have a couple different products. We basically have 3 or 4 different Barracuda devices that do different things. So the message archiver, the online backup provides essentially a cloud-based copy of the archiver that we keep here. The archiver itself is a device that ingests every email that is sent or received within the district and is kept for Cora requests, legal requests, that kind of thing. So if you send or receive an email in the district, this is the device that picks that up. The firewall is basically our device that keeps us separated from the internet, blocks all the bad stuff in and out.
Let me cut through that.
Yep.
Okay. Is this a routine issue? Is this similar to what was done last year?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Good enough. Thank you, sir.
Good? Let's move on to 1.3, Superintendent's recommendation, approval to increase funds to approve district vendor Apple Incorporated. Brandon? And I believe we've hit the max on that one, Brandon. That's what we're here for.
Question. How come we have to go up 120,000?
So what we're trying to do, we have $67,374 in the pipeline. Those are purchases that are going to happen, assuming approval on one of them, which is fairly large. I believe that's why Ms. Ball is here this evening. But I have 200 iPads that are going to be purchased for assessment, 20 for Monaco, 4 iPads that are set to go to ACHS as part of a plan or purchase system. I forget what it's called. So that puts 67,000 currently planned for purchase. We just didn't want to have to bug you again as everybody comes through with their title funds. And if the purchase is over 15,000, you're not pre-approving that, so.
Although those are on the agenda as well.
Right, I saw those. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Good. Anybody else? So let's move on to 1.4, Superintendent's recommendation, approval to purchase Chromebooks for all sub-elementary using Title I funds. Ms. Burke. Anybody have any questions for Sheila?
There's a couple others that come up right following this, right? We've got ALSUP and then Chromebooks at DuPont, and we kind of go back and forth here between iStations and Chromebooks.
Right. Sheila, could you just give maybe a brief, just overview of what you're trying to do so that I know it's going to cover about 2 or 3 of them?
Right, so the Chromebooks at each of these locations is going to be in addition to what the school's already purchasing from the board's initiative. These won't put any of the schools over their amounts, but we wanted to make sure that each child has a device and that it's used for intervention purposes, whether it's in English language arts, whether it's in math, science, social studies, so that they have both a blended learning model of teacher-led instruction and online applications. And so the devices will be able to help to support that.
So later in the year or next fall, will we be looking at doing the same thing at some other schools?
Possibly. This will be part of that. It may be more of a replacement versus a larger purchase, because by then we should be evened out with our one-to-one initiatives.
Okay. These are replacements?
No, these will be actual one-to-one devices for our students. If we're looking at it for next year in the 18-19 school year, if the schools choose to purchase it then, it may be for more replacement purchases versus larger bulk purchases.
Okay.
So that takes care of which ones did you have, since we're jumping ahead? DuPont,
You've got Monaco.
Monaco. Hanson's an iStation,
Also.
and Monaco is an iStation.
Right, so the data that I provided to you prior was with Hanson, and Monaco's iStation was already approved. It's a recommended intervention from the Colorado Department of Education. Hanson had a trial version, and Monaco also had a trial version. Their trials are now up, and so with the data that they've received that I've provided to the board through Monica, they're out asking to purchase that product for an intervention for their students using their title funds.
Okay.
The data was provided several weeks back when Hanson was purchasing their iStation.
Okay.
When Monaco is purchasing theirs.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions about the iStations?
The funding sources on the iStations are separate, so Monaco's funding source is through their Turnaround Network grant, and Hanson's funding source will be their Title I funds.
Right. So we can move on. Does anybody else have any questions about those? We can move on to 1.9, Superintendent's recommendation, calendar change for Sandville Preschool, closure due to plumbing concern on April the 23rd, 2018. Are there any questions for that? That'd be Mr. Gianni Thompson.
Yes, Superintendent, have these pipes got fixed?
I believe so. They did that immediately.
Yeah, the pipes have been rotor-rooted out, but we believe there's a collapsed pipe somewhere close to the street. So we rotor-rooted as much as we could. It's just a slow drain right now. But we'll have to, it's not conducive to
But
dig
am-
that up right
am I
now with
correct
schools in
that
session right in front of the school.
On the day that it happened, immediately we addressed the
Absolutely, yeah.
problem.
And was it Stars last year or Sandville pipes busted last year too?
With Stars?
Was it
Water
Stars?
drinking fountain busted, yeah. And flooded it, yes.
Okay.
Well, there was one at Adams City Middle School also, right?
Is there another water fountain at Adams?
That was a couple years ago, that was a main.
Oh, that was 2 years ago.
Oh, down the center of the hallway, yes.
So do your team look at the pipes, during the summer? Do they come out and inspect them? Because we're losing a lot of school with two pipes, so we don't know next year a pipe might bust. Do we have pre-intervention to look at pipes earlier to make sure that we don't have roots and stuff growing in the pipes?
We can scope them, we don't have a scope, but we can call a company out. That's pretty expensive to have them scope that. Usually if it's roots or something, we get out there and we'll rotor-root it ourselves. But if we have a company come out and scope that, they're gonna charge us.
But do your team prior just go rotor-root, clean them when the summer out, and, pre-inspection, let's do this school, these two schools, then we go to do two more, or do, during the month, during the summers, what I'm saying, during the summer,
To preventative maintenance.
we not doing that.
We've never done that before. Have you done that in the past?
Yeah, they have, they just jet them, and run a rotor-rooter through them.
On a regular basis, though.
On just the ones that have been giving us problems, or where we know we have tree root issues, but not on a regular basis, district-wide.
And
We
I,
don't
I,
have enough.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I think what Mr. Harvey is saying, like if you log all that stuff, if you did it
Regular
for this
basis, yeah.
school, you knew that, like, for example, we just had a problem with this school, we did it, you log it, and like in 6 months, you can go back. So I think that's what he's just talking about,
Yeah.
making sure, like we have data on students, we have data on your equipment so that, we're doing preventative. Am I correct? Is that what we're trying to get to?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can set up a schedule for that. I can send it to you once we develop that.
But we can't, we'll be able to do that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I think what he's asking is, of those schools that are having issues, a regular schedule to jet those pipes so there's not a unforeseen
Right.
backup.
Good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Everybody good? 1.10, Superintendent's recommendation, calendar change for district closure due to high increase of teacher absences on April the 27th, 2018. I think that's Mr. Thompson also. Anybody have any questions about that? Nope.
I think everyone understands that was last Friday when we were going to have 85% of our teachers out. They were going to go march in the Capitol, so for safety reasons, we decided just to cancel school for our teachers. Students, I'm sorry.
All of Adams County did it, didn't they?
Yes.
Any other questions? Let's move on to 1.1. 1.11, Superintendent's recommendation, approval to purchase Voyager intervention materials for DuPont's elementary STOMP program. That's Mrs. Burke again, I think. Anybody have any questions for that one for Mrs. Burke?
I'd just like to know, intervention materials sounds really ominous, like a cattle prod or something, but I don't think that's what you're talking about.
No, so part of this is going to be the teacher kits that we're purchasing and the student kits and the workbooks that they're going to use daily.
The daily materials.
Right.
Consumables.
Consumables, yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you. 1.12, Superintendent's recommendation, approval to purchase iPads and cases for testing in the elementary schools. That's gonna be Miss Jamie Ball.
Questions?
Are any questions?
And even if you can just explain,
Okay.
tell them what we're doing.
Yeah, with our DIBELS and DL testing that we have for our K-3, we need to do the benchmark assessment as well as the progress monitoring on a touchpad device. So I met with Brandon in the tech department. The recommendation was to go with the iPads, and we're looking to expand it to 4th and 5th grade next year. Some of the concerns we had this year with progress monitoring was teachers, we had, I think, 40 iPads, and they were being shared. So we were only able to put about 4 to 5 iPads in schools, and so we got some pushback that progress monitoring wasn't done to fidelity because of the lack of access to the iPads. And so we're looking to increase it so that each teacher has their own, so that we can remove that barrier. And then also another reason why we need iPads is our state assessment that we use for our students that have disabilities and are going towards alternative standards. That test application has to be on an iPad, and so we need to increase the amount that we have on hand.
Does this streamline the record-keeping process?
It is in an assessment management system, and so once the teachers do the progress monitoring, they click a button, and then immediately we have the results to look at.
So by student or by class, or you can
By teacher, by
aggregate and
school,
mix and
across the
match,
district.
so-
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Are they gonna have PDs on this, how to use it, or do they already know how to use it?
This past year was our first year of implementation, and so they received the professional development. But if we get approved for our ELAT grant, we'll have another round of that professional development. And then we also have 2 staff members from our department that go out and support teachers with this.
Good? Thank you. Let's move on to 1.13, Superintendent's recommendation, approval to purchase custodial equipment. I think that's Mike and Scott and maybe Gianni.
Are these considered replacement items or additions to what we already have? And are they going to disinfect better than what we currently have to disinfect, et cetera?
Yeah, it is for replacement of worn out equipment, and the disinfectant is a new tool out this year for disinfecting schools and killing any viruses within a 3-hour window.
That's gonna be a preventative tool. The flu outbreaks, we can get on top of it real fast so kids aren't having to miss school because of the flu outbreaks that some districts experienced this last year. I had to close school due to some of those.
How is this going to contain flu outbreaks?
Well, it's preventative, so when you know you have a flu outbreak and some districts are closing, you can go in and spray an entire room down with the disinfectant, and go into the next room and spray them all down. So,
Okay.
And then come back through and wipe, so
Right,
it's not,
right.
you're spraying with a bottle.
Any other questions? Let's move on to 1.14, Superintendent's recommendation, approval to purchase equipment to replace steamers at Adams City Middle School, Central Elementary, and Rose Hill Elementary. I think that's Scott, and say your name again?
It's Kasha.
Kasia?
Kasha Larson, yeah.
Kasia, okay.
So these units have broken down in the schools, and we have been using ovens and other sources to make the food. But we want to replace these units, and we have cap reserve left for this year that we had intended to use for this purpose, for safe, efficient preparation of food for our students. Really trying to give them the best product possible. Steaming is proven also to be a way to keep nutrients in vegetables and so forth. So we want to be able to replace those units so we can do that.
in the three schools that they're being brought into, does the school have more than one steamer?
No, a lot of these units are kind of grouped together, so if part of it fails, the whole system will fail. So these are old units that needed to be replaced. We are looking at doing double stack units in the two schools that do higher volume. These schools serve from 250 to about 750 students, depending on the school site. So we'll do the double stack units in the schools that do higher volume, and then the smaller one in Rose Hill.
When one breaks down, to what extent does that alter or interrupt the food service?
Well, these do have two separate compartments. So we are able to, if one part of the compartment goes down, we are able to use the second part of the compartment. And we have been able to successfully repair them up to this point, but we are no longer able to. The units that we're replacing are kind of at the end of their useful life at this point. We've exhausted all ways
What's their useful life?
till they die, really. I don't know. I'd have to look it up on that.
Well, no, I mean, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or?
Probably 5 years,
Okay.
typically. Because
So-
it's very heavy use, because we have such high participation, we have
Sure.
very heavy use.
Does it change from one model to the next?
I don't know. I haven't looked into that.
Does it make sense for the district to buy a spare?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Scott about that, because I don't know how easy it is to get those things moved around and put back in.
So, I mean-
It's not like something you just plug in. You have to actually,
Right. But I mean, we're talking 15 grand for
sure.
one of these things. And
Right.
if we need 3 now, and it was a couple meetings ago, we had a extended conversation about a broken steamer.
Right, and I took that to heart, what Mr. Thomas had said to that, and so I really wanted to come to you guys
Yeah,
with
so
this request, yeah.
I'm just thinking, if it's a standardized piece of equipment,
Sure.
it's not going to be obsolete
Right.
immediately or quickly,
Sure.
within a year or two. Can we spring for a spare? So
Well,
that then when
I
a
can
school
certainly-
has that problem, it breaks down in the middle of the school year,
Sure.
we just, over the weekend or something, switch it out,
I can absolutely talk to Scott and Gianni about that to see if they think that's feasible.
I mean, that's,
Sure,
Seems
no, I
like
understand what
a
you're saying,
reasonable thing to
absolutely,
do.
yeah. Even if, you see like at Rose Hill, we're doing the smaller table, the countertop unit too. So if we have something that's out of commission, takes a while to fix, the countertop is a nice option, possibly too, as a backup, and not quite as expensive, so.
Right.
Yeah,
okay, thanks.
I have a question.
sure.
You said 5 years lifespan of them? And we,
That is just off the top of my head without having done any research, so I apologize if, I don't know how accurate that's going to be.
okay, so we don't know the lifespan. And have we done any maintenance on those, like warranty maintenance? The people that put them in, I think it says United Restaurant Supply, do they come in and do work on them? Do we have that?
Okay, Scott's gonna answer that for me.
Yeah, I can. Each of the kitchen managers do have a deliming and maintenance plan for and all the equipment that's been put in the kitchen. That was put in place last year, so they have filtration systems, water softeners, and a deliming schedule to have that equipment treated.
Okay, but we're not talking about last year.
It's in place this year. All the managers, it was put in place last year, but all the managers have that in their kitchens now for those maintenance plans. They previously did not have any, so that's why some of the equipment probably had a premature failure.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's in place.
Okay.
I'm just guessing, but I think the last big purchase we had was about 10 years ago. Because the high school went to brand-new steamers and some of the other kitchens, because I remember that.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking it's been about 10 years. the last big purchases for steamers, because they were our systems were so outdated that we were using.
That's correct. There was a couple of grants, I believe. They got one kettle over at Kemp Elementary and a new steamer down at Hanson Elementary last year.
I do remember that. I just don't know exactly. It seems like it's been about 10 years, because I was still working.
You worked?
Yes, I did. I did.
Any other questions about the steamers? Thank you.
Thank you.
Just so you know, they do have a
Let's move on to 1.15, Superintendent's Recommendation, Approval of Asphalt Repair Replacement at Adams City High School.
Is this asphalt specialty, this is not the company we used when they built the high school, is it?
That is the company that was contracted by Adolph and Peterson, correct?
And this is the company we sued?
That is the company that was chosen through the purchasing.
No. Is this the company that this district sued?
They are the one that won the bid, yes, sir.
So we giving the bid to the company we sued let me rephrase my question. It was 4 companies, from what I'm reading,
That's correct.
and we sued Asphalt Specialty for about $370,000, and you awarded Asphalt Specialties the contract.
The highest bid after that.
I think it was Patch something.
At the price.
By our rule, unless there is a written statement of non-use and for a period of time for that contractor not to do work for the district or any contractor, we have to have that on file. Going through the records, knowing what I know about it, I have no findings to say that they done unsatisfactory work. That's on record to say that they can't do it now from a number of years ago when they done that patch or that original install.
I'm not sure I understood what you said. I'm sure that I didn't understand what you said.
What I can say, if we don't have something on file with the district in regards to saying that a contractor can't do work for the district, saying they've done, bad work, and so we put them on notice, telling them that, you're on notice and you won't be able to bid any of the school district projects for a year or whatever that time period is. And then with that, we have the option to say that that contractor can't do any bid work for the school district. If we don't have something in place, then they can protest it stating that, they have done work in the past for any organization, and they have the right to bid that particular project unless we have on file a notice to that contractor stating that they cannot do work for the district with these findings.
What was the issue in the past? What was the lawsuit over?
That was prior to my arrival. That was a installation from when the building was built new. And I was brought into it in October, last summer. And the findings were that the asphalt mix that they put down was not flexible enough to take the different temperature swings, and so we ended up with multiple cracks throughout the parking lot. And so the district at that time had litigations against this particular vendor to collect unforeseen damages to the district.
Are we talking about the big parking lot just east of the high school? immediately to the east, on the east side of the high school building?
Yes, that's correct.
When did the cracks first show up?
I couldn't answer that, sir. It was way before my time. The building was built in 2008. I'm not certain when those cracks came about, but we went into notice with the general contractor, A&P, in the last hour of our warranty phases to redeem some of the money for that parking lot with this particular vendor. I just got involved with it this last summer of being one of the professional witnesses to the current condition of that parking lot.
What's the downside to delaying repair for any amount of time?
The downside of it is basically our risk management with people trying to travel across that parking lot pedestrian-wise and ending up stepping in one of those cracks and getting seriously injured.
And the cracks can't just be repaired?
No, they'll come right back. That's what if you look at the cracks now, that's what their attempt was before, is to put crack seal in there, and you'll see the rubberized material in there has been spread so far it can't even hold it, it can't bond it together anymore.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have available our attorney at the meeting next week to possibly address that question of whether the asphalt specialties must be allowed to bid on the jobs, or whether the board can avoid their participation in the bid process?
So, okay, so what I think I hear Scott saying is there is no policy or from the board level, and there is no not for reuse language. And in the RFP process, what we ask you to do is find the most reasonable contractor to do the work based on 3 or 4 bids, correct? Is that, am I on the right line?
Yeah, it was put out on BidNet. So any contractor that has access to BidNet would have been able to bid on that project.
But the Board of Education can vote no not to use this company. We don't have to go.
That's correct.
Y'all can start over and rebid.
That's
Not
correct.
with this company. So we don't have to have all that in writing that the Board of Education, which is us, can vote
we have
no.
the right, yeah, that's correct. That is in the RFP, that you have the right to refuse any and all bids.
So what I would suggest, Mr. Thomas, is that we give you guys the other bids to view and to see what the other ones were before you make that decision, because it could be costly.
I would like to ask, so you selected asphalt because they came in at the lowest price? That's the problem, I believe, with this district. We always take low bidders, and they're not doing the quality work that we want, and now it's coming back, and we have to put more money into it. Why don't we, how good were the other ones? Can you tell me who the other bidders were? Are they well-known names as far as asphalt is concerned, doing the asphalt? Because you're right, they cracked within, I think, 6-7 years after the school was built, so that would have put it like 2015, 2016. We came in, they filled in the holes, they didn't do a very good job. Once again, they're cracked again. So, and I don't know if who you had fill them, but I'm tired of always getting the lowest bid, and then we come back 5-6 years later, and we got to find ways of repairing it. So I'd rather pay the little extra if we have the money and get it done right. And that was my suggestion.
Right, and we put a specification together, and that specification gave great detail on what we're wanting as far as mill out for both cracks and then the total surfaces to be followed. We also have a AIA contract to go with this purchase that gives us the protection of, if it's not done right, we still have the right to withhold fundings until it's done correctly or go back to litigation. So that's one of our steps that we put in place to make sure that we had that protection for, contractor not getting the product or the material put down per the specification. Now, what I can tell you, out of the 4 that we had, only 2 of them met all the different criteria of the specification. The other 2 did not fill out the form completely on the other 2 purchases that we asked for. So the next one that filled out that form completely, I believe, was $650,000 in that neighborhood versus the 360.
I'm kind of confused, Mr. Weber, because in here it says Rocky Mountain e-purchasing system, which 4 companies matched the solicitation, and Asphalt Specialties was selected as the vendor. Now you're telling us in front of us that only 2 of them didn't fill out the paperwork, and then Mr. Thompson just said that he can provide us the other 3 companies. So, Superintendent, can you get the other companies from Mr. Thompson? Because I think, and give it to Monica so we can at least look at it, because it's, I don't think you'll put 4 companies in here, and Mr. Thompson just said 4 companies and he can provide us with the information, and then Mr. Weber is giving us something totally different. And I'm confused myself, so I would take Mr. Thompson's advice and show us the other bids and let the Board of Education decide if we want to do with this asphalt specialty or pick the other 3 pick one of the other 3 companies with a consensus.
Well, let's pull it off the board. Let's pull it off the agenda for Tuesday.
All right, thank you.
Well, before we pull it, I'd also like to, how are they going to do the process? Are they going to try to do the whole area at one time? And is that going to be in the summer?
Yeah.
If we have no parking out there for the summer, what are we going to do with our summer activities?
Well,
My thing would be, wouldn't they do the south side first, which is the big parking lot, and get that out of the way at the very beginning, and then move on to the north side and do that, so that way we have parking for all our students that participate in summer football, summer track, summer soccer, baseball, whatever sports we're offering. Otherwise, are we going to make them park over at Hanson, then walk underneath the tunnel, or?
Well, we'll still have to also coordinate that with the football field if that gets approved as well. So being all done at the same time, not in one sweep, we'll have to coordinate that in terms of sections, yes.
Okay.
And just for the record, I don't know how many bids there were. I was suggesting that we bring the bids forward, all
Right.
of them.
So we're gonna pull it off the agenda for Tuesday. And we'll set a study session. We can't do it this Tuesday, because we've got business prior to that, but maybe at the next board meeting, we can have those presented to us, and we'll do a study session right here, and,
That's fair.
I don't care, however you wanna do it. You wanna have them email to us and not have a study session, or you wanna have a study session, have conversation?
Well, then we can have them prior to study session. You can get some,
Can you get them to Monica and she can email them to us?
Yep.
Okay.
and then we could review them.
So Monica, for the record, 1.15 is gonna be removed?
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, I'd be really interested to know, as part of this, digging up more information on this whole thing, how contentious the lawsuit was. Often a vendor that really wants to work with you, if there's, flawed workmanship or flawed materials, often that subcontractor's happy to come in and make things right. And only when they're not willing to do that does it generally lead down the path to a lawsuit. And so obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious, but most likely, the subcontractor in this case felt that they had delivered an adequate product and service. or else they are just trying to save a few bucks and we're trying to stiff the district. I don't know, but maybe there must be some historical record, and you know, I'd love to have at least some understanding of what was at stake in that lawsuit and how contentious was it, and because that would
Well,
influence the way I would view using them in the future.
I would be happy to sit down with you and go through that and share that with you, but I don't think we should be discussing that
Okay.
in a public forum.
Yeah, we can get you that information.
Okay.
Right. So for Tuesday, 1.15 will be removed.
Moved.
Okay. Moving on to 1.16, Superintendent's recommendation approval of Kearney Middle School gym floor finish. Any questions for Scott, I believe, again?
Do they have to be replaced, the gym floor, or can we resand it? How many times has Kearney been refinished?
That's what they're doing. They're just sanding and painting new lines
Oh,
on it.
okay, so
sealing
you're
it.
not replacing
No,
wood
they're
then?
not replacing it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Refinished, can't even read.
I'm sorry. How often does this happen? How often does a elementary school gym floor need to be refinished?
An elementary gym floor can go a lot longer because it doesn't have the daily activity sports on it like a middle school or a high school sport, so elementaries can go quite a bit longer. We try to extend it between 3 and 5 years on the middle school, and the high school is done, pardon me, every year.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thanks, Scott.
All right.
So maybe I can lump all these together for you, Eddie. Superintendent's recommendation, approval to increase funds for approved district vendor for Amazon. You want to do just one at a time?
Sure.
Okay.
So we recently changed the way we're looking at our vendors and the way we're tracking their cumulative spending. And in doing that, we identified, these next 5 as needing additional approval. So, I anticipate in some of these that there would be additional purchases. So like Amazon, I imagine there's some going to be purchased from Amazon probably in the next couple of months, and this would just increase that approved limit on Amazon to allow us to make those purchases.
Superintendent, question for you. What is staff purchasing on Amazon.com? Going from 19,000, which is 20,000, that they need another 30,000 before the school year is out. What are they purchasing, or, because I know when we get things, I see Amazon.com, but I'm just trying to figure out what are they purchasing for less than almost basically 2 months for 15,000 for each month. That's the rest of the school year, and they only spend 19,000 from July 1st to today, and they need an extra 30,000 for 2 months.
I don't think they need the extra 30. I think you're just trying to anticipate so that you don't have to go in front of the board. Am I correct, Eddie?
So the 19,000 is the original purchase approval amount.
Right.
And, this is an additional 30.
Right, and the school year is over June 30th.
Right.
And today is May 3rd, so that's 15,000 for the next 2 months, and you use 19,000 for almost 7 months. So I'm just, 19,000 for almost 7 months. So I'm trying to figure out, in 2 months, why do you need 30,000? And in 7 months, you only use 19,000. So that's a big discrepancy to me.
I read that as meaning requesting an additional 10 grand, because he's saying we are requesting an increase to the spending threshold. Well, it's ambiguous.
It is an additional 30, right? So if we need to correct the language there, then we'll correct that language. And what I would add is that this was an additional review procedure that we've put into place. And I think in the past, so starting in January, this has been more of one of my responsibilities. And so we've looked at the way we're tracking this. And we've tried to put in place a better process to make sure this is occurring. And in doing that, we've identified, these. So in the case of Amazon, the procedure that we put into place was to say, when requisitions are coming through, if they're over a $2,500 threshold, then we'll go back and we'll check to see cumulatively where are they at. The problem with that is that cumulative list is only being updated so frequently. And so in this case, it was over a month when this cumulative list was being updated. So this increase represents, beyond even just the next 2 months, but the past month, which has already occurred. So that is, us improving that process and now trying to go forward with, our best foot and, having fidelity in what we're communicating to you about these particular vendors.
Okay, so can you provide, Superintendent, can you provide July the 1st, 2017, Amazon.com spreadsheets for each month up to today and what was spent, each item that was spent in that month in total, to see why do we need to go up 13,000 for 2 months before the school year is out? Thank you.
But one more time, Eddie, you're requesting the 30,000. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to spend that whole 30,000. You just want to have it there?
That's partly true. Part of that is adding room to make sure, whatever we think it would take us to get to the end of the year.
Okay.
But it's also representing that delay from when we were updating our cumulative spend sheet to when we evaluated purchases cumulatively to see where we were.
Okay, I got it.
Well, are you also changing your spending pattern? Are you shifting purchases that used to be not on Amazon to Amazon purchases? So are you saying you're ramping up expenditures, not the expenditures in toto, but you're shifting some purchases from conventional vendors to Amazon? I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, I do think that is what's occurring, because I think the way this has worked in the past, so the question would be, where did the 19,962 ever come from? And in the past, what we did is we took the prior year's spending with a particular vendor, Amazon, and we said, what was that number? And then June 28th of last year, we, said, here's all the vendors with what we predict they're going to have as a spend the next year. And we said, just sort of a blanket approval of these vendors at those amounts, unless a particular transaction comes in over 15,000. And then what's happened is here, now you're seeing the spending at Amazon is actually coming in significantly higher than the prior year. Or that prior year number that was presented to you was, not the right number. But this is what we're seeing, is that what was approved was 19,962. And we're going to need significantly more than that when we're evaluating it cumulatively. And I think that, while this is both us trying to put in better procedures to move forward and more accurately track this, this is also, a fairly new procedure overall to say that the district is going to be tracking spending cumulatively. And I think we're trying to work through some of those problems of how do we do that? So with Amazon, that's all of the schools all together. And what we see this with other vendors too, like you'll see with Kids First, there's a main Kids First contract and it's approved to a set amount, but then you have someone else come through and they say, it's another $1,500. But that's not, that's nowhere near that even the low $2,500 limit where we're looking at it. So nobody ever questions whether or not that needs to go to the board for approval, but it's cumulatively at a point where it would need board approval, and so then we're needing to throw it back to you. So what I'm going to say too is, if as we continue to evaluate these vendors cumulatively, this is sort of the first round. I imagine there's going to be, more after this, which we're going to have to do the same thing, probably a bigger number
Yeah, I think
Each meeting as the year progresses, because there's more and more, and what I would say under probably, Sandy and Kelly, this was just not occurring. And so with Sean and I, we're saying we need to be bringing these to you, and you need to be aware of the ones where we're at those limits, and we need to be having the conversation with you.
So if these wasn't coming to the Board of Education, where was the money coming from then to fill a need of the 15,000, the 30,000? What account would those coming out of if it wasn't coming to the Board of Education?
That money was already budgeted, but you hadn't approved the cumulative totals for a particular vendor. So I'm not saying we were spending money that wasn't budgeted. I'm saying that in the past, we didn't.
In essence, I think what he's trying to say is that
There's,
only the board is only seeing at this point, up until now, the purchases that were hitting that $15,000 purchase. And not, even though maybe one person spent with, kind of like with Apple, one person spent 5,000 but didn't have to come to the board. One person spent 10, one person spent 14. So by the time the person that spent 14,000, it should have come to the board because we had already accumulated 14, close to $15,000 with Apple.
But if I ain't mistaken, Dr. Abrego, when we get our the P card updates every month, I think staff is using Amazon.com. If I ain't mistaken, when we get those accounts payable, staff is using Amazon.com. So this is what I'm saying. What I'm thinking is it's not a cumulative one purchase at one time. It's a collective accumulation of Amazon.com. So the reason you happen to come to the Board of Education right now is because it's over $15,000, and y'all need to put $15,000 in the Amazon.com account. Am I right or wrong?
You're right when you're saying that this is because of the cumulative spending, that it's, so when I'm saying cumulative, I'm not, collective is everything all together as opposed to the individual, and this is those collections of these small amounts that Amazon, without ever having a trigger to make us analyze it and say, this needs to go back to the board and get that approval, was never coming before you. And so now we've put in this process where we're evaluating those and we're finding those, and now we're bringing it to you.
So I want to ask maybe the same question differently. Moving forward, after July, should we or the district expect to spend somewhere in the vicinity of $15,000 per month on Amazon product?
No.
No.
Eddie, let me see if I think I know what you're trying to do because, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain to the board. The new finance manager inherited a system that our old finance manager used to use. Am I correct? And all this was that you're trying to fix was under the other finance person. You're trying to improve the system, and I think the other ones are going to follow it. You're doing the same thing, that you're trying to correct, or you're trying to improve in the system that we had before to implement a new system that you guys think is going to be better and keep the board more informed on the spending?
Right. We've implemented a better system, and it's identifying these now, and we're bringing them forward. So I would expect that you would continue to see these, but I think it may be a bigger discussion that Sean and I may want to have related to that policy and whether or not the way that ends up playing out, and if there are better ways to do things.
And if I'm not mistaken, this is what Dr. Hyde been asking the board to do, is go to finance and learn the systems, what they doing, and he could have came back to the board to save this time. We asking Eddie all these questions. He been trying to get make appointments with finance and ask questions about certain things. You bring a new finance manager in here, just like you bring a new superintendent in here, and everybody want to change the system, and we the last ones to find out, and now we ask Eddie these questions, but then where is the finance manager that's implementing these programs? Where is he at?
I think he is not in the district today, correct?
Right, he is out of the district, so he was.
And this is not to be hard on Eddie, but it's to be asking questions that we don't know. If he's changing something, we don't know. And now all of a sudden, Eddie getting grilled, which don't make it fair for him. And now Dr. Hyde been asking to go to the finance and sit around and ask questions. So I'm just saying it again. We're gonna just throw it in the board's face. Oh, it's Adams 14 Board of Education, and they don't care. And that's not you, Eddie, but I'm asking the superintendent because this is your recommendation. This is what you should have been giving us to understand, superintendent, prior to us sitting on this dais today, because we're doing teachers' things, we're doing a whole bunch of other stuff, and now all of a sudden it's questioning a staff employee, and it's not making it seem like we're being hard on him. But we had a board member when he came on the dais asking questions about trying to get in finance to learn what's going on. So I think we need for you, superintendent, to set up an appointment for the Board of Education, also with Dr. Hyde, so he can meet Eddie and the gentleman that's not here tonight that's implementing all these policies. And does the policies need to be changed to meet the new criteria of what the new finance manager is doing?
And I think we can definitely do that. And I don't know if Mr. Hyatt had asked to have an appointment with Eddie, but I know that they welcomed any board member to come in and talk to them. And I think we can do those two things. Am I correct, Eddie? If any board member, as long as not more than 3 want to come talk to you, you can explain on an individual basis to them. And we can also set up the workshop if you need, because, again, if they're going to change the system to improve it, they could let you know what they're doing.
Sure.
Well, so I'm going to try it one more time. Is that all right with you, Dr. Abrego, if I approach Eddie directly and ask to have a sit-down with him to go over some of these basic things?
We can set that up for you.
What's that?
We can set that up for you. You and if another board member wants to come along too, as long as it's not more than 3.
Okay, I mean, the problem last time is I thought, well, we did have an agreement, and then it was torpedoed by adding the requirement that an additional person sit in. And so then we were trying to coordinate the schedules of 4 people, and that it gets topsy-turvy. And I'm not trying to, make a mountain out of a molehill here. I just, it would, do you feel that it's necessary to have 2 board members sit in on a meeting?
I said if you want to come in, we can coordinate for you. We can make sure that they're available.
So I could just call Eddie and set up
I would appreciate if you call me.
Call you?
Okay. Right.
And you'll set up a meeting?
We'll set up the
and
meeting.
go back and forth?
And if we
Okay,
want
I'll try that.
2 board members, we can do it even 2. As long as we don't have more than 2, we're okay.
Okay. Is there another board member that is interested in sitting in on this meeting?
I think you do fine. I know a lot more about it than I
So,
do.
okay. Mr. Thomas, is that okay with you?
That's fine with me. You can
Cool.
go by
Okay,
yourself.
so that's what I'm going to try that again.
We'll set it up.
And that's the same with all of these, Eddie, that you have here? That's the same, pretty much the same process of what you're trying to implement and everything, so, okay, so we can make that happen soon. When are you available? How busy are you?
With one person, it's.
I'll email the superintendent today, probably tomorrow, and that'll get the ball rolling. Okay?
Good. Right. And I just want to make sure we're clear. Dr. Hyde will set appointment, and then did you want the other one with the board too, or is it just one?
What other one?
I don't know. I thought he said he wanted a workshop so they can inform all the board members on the new system of what he's trying to do.
It was Mr. Thomas that had suggested a additional study session.
That'll be fine too.
Yeah,
That's
but it's no
But that
hurry.
gets us past this one
Yeah,
for right now.
but, yeah, that's past this one, but we going in order, or we gonna go to the ones Eddie doing? Because I got a question for another one.
For, in this bunch,
Yes.
so So do you have any, so let's just do it.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for American Produce?
No.
Is that food?
Yes.
And is it generally fresh fruit? Or frozen?
That is all fresh fruit and vegetables.
Thanks.
So, any questions for College Board AP exams? One point two oh.
One question. On this College Board AP exams, are they gonna have tutors to help them? Is that included in this? Or is this paying for the test? Are they got somebody helping them?
I think that's paying for the tests, and this stuff is more of that cumulative that's already there. I don't know of one that's scheduled or that somebody is going to bring forward for AP college exams. So my guess is, this is all just to bring the approval to the cumulative spend amount for AP college exams. So I don't think there's additional work being done with AP college exams.
I wanna,
Can I,
go ahead.
let me just try to explain. What we do is, the students take the AP class throughout the year, and then at the end of the year, to get the college credit, they have to take the AP exam. We pay for the exam. The student has already taken the class throughout the whole year,
Right.
semester, and I think they have to score, I think, a 3 or better to get the college credit. So this is basically to pay for that exam, so the students don't have to pay for it.
Okay, right, okay. I'm good with that.
Good?
Yes, thank you.
So then, let's move on to Kids First.
Now, with Kids First, we signed the contract with Kids First. I believe 15, 16, it was 405,000. Then they went up to 410 or 411, and then we just approved this 497,000. But we signed the contract with them.
Right.
So this has to be
It's additional work. So like they're doing CPR training. So additional work that's outside of that contract done actually by someone other than the, it's been student services who have negotiated that contract. And now this is actually Jesse Martinez, who's, setting up these CPR classes. So it's additional work beyond what's in that contract coming through after, well after that contract is done, and at a small dollar amount, like $1,000 for a training class.
right, but it's this. I just don't like the word, Nettie. We are requesting an increase to spending threshold for additional 10,000. Individual purchase over 15,000 will still require board approval. But I don't think no first aid classes is gonna be over $10,000 or $15,000.
No, and this is just saying, we already had the contract amount at I think it's 497, right? And
Yeah.
then there's been, so many thousand have come through, and there's an additional couple thousand coming that we now see that are these additional classes, small, like $1,000 at a time. So that total amount that we're saying wouldn't be higher than 10,000 for all of that additional stuff beyond the contract.
Right, but what's confusing me is the contract of 405,000, they didn't exceed that. The contract prior to the 417 or 4-something, a lower 400, and I believe we had a study session with, and he's gone, about them taking that expense of up from 417.
Like 50,000.
Yeah, it was 50 to 60,000 to this number right here, and everything they did was included in that contract. So now they exceeding their contract. So I, Dr. Abrego, would like to see the date the contract was signed. I want to see a monthly spreadsheet for each month to show that $497,000 was spent. I want a breakdown of each expenditure in that month, who and what was paid for, because they didn't go over the lesser amount 2 years ago, and then we gave them $60,000 now, and if I'm mistaken, they are using a temporary nursing agency too, right? With $100,000,
You know, I'm not sure about that, but
because that's on the accounts payable that I asked for, that they're using a temporary nursing agency. So if they're using another $100,000 for something else, and this is $497,000, we got, you know,
so I hear what you're saying, and we'll,
Yes.
you know, we will follow through with your request. My thought is, though, that the additional stuff coming through is services not covered under that contract.
I'd like for John to look at that contract too, and then I'd like for the stuff that's not covered under that contract that you're requesting to also go to John too, because this hasn't happened in the last 2 years we've been on the board. That now all of a sudden they want extra money because they said stuff is not in the contract. So I'm confused, not with you, but I'm confused that 400-some thousand a couple of years ago wasn't no problem, and everything was covered under the contract. Last year, everything was covered under the contract. Then we went up $60,000 for Kids First. Now all of a sudden, things ain't covered under the contract, and they want extra money. I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out where's the
I can see how that would be confusing. I think, you know, I would go back to what I was saying earlier, that prior to this spring, I don't think there was a formal procedure in place to identify, you know, when these types of things occurred. And so it may have occurred and nobody identified it. So we have to put, you know, we have to put in the procedures to identify them, and now we have them, and now you're hearing that. So
they need a contract.
yes, but I'm saying whether or not you would have been notified 2 years ago about when something like this occurred, and I think it's possible you were not, but it occurred.
Superintendent, we're gonna have to talk off with the Board of Education, not on the dais right now. Thank you, Eddie.
Okay, you okay with that one now then? So let's move on to Pearson Incorporated.
What do they do? Or what do they sell?
That's curriculum materials.
Basically testing.
And that's the same cumulative,
Testing?
Testing and resources.
Yeah.
and that's the same cumulative number that's gotten, somebody's bought something numerous times and it's getting to this point now.
That is how we identified it, yes, is through that process.
Any other questions? All right, let's move on to 1.22 for discussion, advisory committees. So the first one we have, School Improvement Advisory Committee. Are we gonna have one? We need to form one? What do we need to do with it? What do we wanna do with it?
Hold on to me, I'm trying to see. Okay, I don't have my notes writing. There you go. School, we doing the first one, right? The
First one, School Improvement Advisory.
Advisory Committee. If I am mistaken, from right now, this district is the only district that does not have any advisory committees, except for the one the superintendent put together. But far as the school improvement advisory committee, that would, to me, would be at the high school. Which would give the board some transparency and let, in the public, and take pressure off of staff and ourselves, and we can listen to advisory committees to give us some update, to let us know what's going on. And I think it's more positive to in the public's eye that we starting to have advisory committees. That's just, as far as the school improvement advisory committee. I strongly feel that we do need one, because if you look at any school district in the state of Colorado, basically, all of them has advisory committees. We are the only school that I know of that does not have no advisory committee for nothing. And this here is a step forward for us to make a leap forward to start doing things.
Okay, so just for my information, Harvest, how do we implement it? What do we do? It's gonna be the board level to report back to the board?
Well,
To report back to the superintendent, to report back to who?
the advisory committee would, as far as the board would set it up, we'd work together, decide how many people in the community you want on it, how many, anything you want on it, and you have it, we just want it at the high school. And the reason I say the high school is, think about it, when they implemented that don't wear red or don't wear blue, that wasn't the board said that. That was a couple of people got together, and now look at it. We've been going through the whole year deciding kids upset. That should have been an advisory committee that could have done that. You had advisory committee for the freshmen coming in, understanding what's going on. There go advisory committee. You can have advisory committee at the high school to alleviate a lot of the pressure. Just like we get an email saying that the time has changed at the high school. The board did not have no input on that, nothing. So I'm saying is, we have a board policy. We can read the board policy and work it together to implement a school improvement advisory.
Okay. So first of all, how do the other board members, would you?
So the question would be, Harvest, how will you, geez, I can't even think now, sleepy. How would your committee be organized?
Not my committee.
No, I mean, this committee here.
See, the advisory committee will continue when we are off this board, when the superintendent is off this board. That advisory committee will keep going, will meet, just like the city. They has a planning commission. They have a derby. The city of Commerce City has almost up to 10 committees. Ours will be an advisory committee. It won't be Harvest. It'll be Adams 14 High School's school advisory committee.
I misgave you that, but my question is, who will make up this committee? Will it be teachers? Will it be administrators? Will it be students? Will it be?
Everybody.
Well, we still got to put a cap on it somewhere.
Yeah, but-
We just can't open it up to
Yeah,
everybody.
Well, I mean,
But
that's-
I think
that's-
we have to set down some perimeters and say how many people we want in that committee. If 50 people want to come in, we're going to have chaos. We'll be right back where we are, so.
But what it is,
Who's going to decide the membership, I guess, what I want
the
to.
Board of Education is part of the board policy. The board policy states we put the advisory committee together. We have to work together to put the advisory committee together. We are to decide how many or what people we want to be on that committee. Yes, Superintendent.
And I would be happy to draft something, and then at a work session, we can go over it, and we can change it, we can do whatever we want to it. But that's, step one. And, you can like what I write up, or you can hate what I write up. But that way I get something, and we get something in front of the board, and then the board decides, how they want to change it. But so I totally agree that we should have several standing committees. And so I'm totally in support of having an advisory committee for the high school. And I think Mr. Rolla's point's well taken. You know, what's it going to look like? Well, let me come up with a thought. I'll write it up. We'll share it, and we can go from there. You know, we're not going to just wave a magic wand and have something, you know, in place. We're going to have to discuss it. But I'm happy to take the first cut, and if you rip it to shreds, that's no offense taken.
Board President, may I make a comment? And I think that School Improvement Advisory Committee, I think we already have that at the schools, the back teams, and I just want to make sure that, you know, are we going to respect their wishes? Because again, you said that how this time change came about. It's the high school felt they had a situation with trying to improve attendance, so they followed certain steps. Number one is they did talk to their staff about changing the time, because I said, I can't do that for you unless you follow certain steps. So the first step they did was they talked to their staff, and most of their staff, you know, the majority of staff bought in, and yeah, we're good with this. And then they took it back to their back team, which is their school advisory committee, and then the parents said it was okay. So I'm trying to understand the differences between, you know, the committee we're talking about here and what's being done at the schools, because every school is going to have a back team.
Right, but that's Building Accountability Advisory Council. That's a little bit different. DAC is the District Accountability Advisory Council. I think what Harvest is talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mean to speak for you.
No, go ahead, you good.
Is it?
We have so many things going on in the district all of the time. It's not new, okay? It's always, and it's been my conversation with a lot of different folks all the time, that enough people aren't involved in a lot of the decisions that are being made.
Mm-hmm.
So this advisory council would be one that would be appointed by the Board of Education. We would reach out, we would do outreach to the community or to whoever we decide it's gonna be, and help us understand what's going on, what kind of directions they foresee happening in the future, to make recommendations to the school that, you know, this is what the parents are asking for. This is what all this stuff that's going on. I think it's a good idea, but Dr. Hyde, you're writing that up as step 2. Step 1 is, do we want this advisory council?
Yeah.
So I actually think it's a good idea. So I'm okay with it. Mr. Rolla?
I'm good with it.
Ms. Quintana? So, okay, so we'll start doing some work, Dr. Hyde, if you would. Write something up. That's the first
When
one.
would you like that?
Well-
Can we set a date?
Yeah, that'll be further discussion. Okay, that's not the discussion for tonight. We got one going tonight, okay? So let's go on down the list, and then we'll start setting dates and times, okay? So then we have Accountability Accreditation Advisory.
Yes. There's no curriculum in this district. I've been asking for one since I walked on this dais. You got teachers, you got chief academic officers, you have everyone that can work on this accountability accreditation. Everybody can work on this together as a team. There's no, again, this is another advisory to the board. Things we don't see, things we don't have to. We're not in the administration meetings. We don't understand what the administration we don't know about, recess. The board, that didn't come to the Board of Education. You know, things that we don't know, but advisory committees about accountability can help make this district better. Working with staff again, working with the community. This is about the community and teachers and just coming together that we can do these type of things. And it ain't no pressure on nobody. It shouldn't be pressure of, they trying to take my job. How's the advisory committee gonna take your job? It's more or less you helping what the community is doing, understanding what we need to do, how we can work together and move forward as a unit and as a team.
And may I make a comment, Board President? Again, I hear the term, we don't have a curriculum. We do have a curriculum. And I'm just going to give you real quick. If I'm a freshman student, the curriculum is set out for me. As a freshman, I'm going to take algebra. As a sophomore, I'm going to take geometry. As a junior, I'm going to take algebra 2 trig. As a senior, calculus. That's the path that I could take. That is the curriculum. Curriculum is what is taught. At the high school, it's all laid out. It all depends what path you want to take. At the elementary, every single student has to take, first grade is going to have the Colorado academic standards for first grade, second grade, and so forth. So we do have a curriculum in our district.
It's not to go back and forth with the superintendent of what he feel we have and what we don't have. I asked for we put together an advisory committee, and if there is.
To the Board of Education.
Through the Board of Education.
To the Board of Education.
Right. And if there is a curriculum, we can improve it. When I first came in on this dais with you, Tim, I asked, where is it at? Where's the book? The book was old. The book was outdated. And if I'm not mistaken, I did say, well, what's one of the top school districts in the state of Colorado? And they said Boulder Valley. I said, okay, pull up Boulder Valley's curriculum for second graders in math, what they doing compared to ours. Theirs was like 15 to 20 pages, ours was 2 pages. Okay, so I said, if they're the best, how come we can't take what they have and make it better? And I think you said, Mr. Roller, about sports, in that you emulate the best to be the best. Is that, I believe you said that a couple of years ago when you was board president. So now, how come we can't do an accountability, accreditation advisory committee and take from the best so we are the best? Put the committee together instead of us deciding, oh, if I'm a freshman, I can take algebra. What if I can't take algebra? Do they got general math? The committee is to start from the top to the bottom to the top, and work together to see what we can do as a unit and quit trying to divide ourselves like you're trying to do today and say we can do this.
I agree. So, Board, do we want an accountability accreditation advisory?
The only thing that I'd raise, I think it's really important. In fact, it's so important, I wonder whether it's advisable to split it, because we've talked about accountability a lot among ourselves. And that's just accountability by itself is huge. Are we comfortable trying to swallow the two in one advisory committee, accountability and accreditation? I could visualize a subcommittee being having its hands full for a long time working on improving accountability. But if we want to start off with it jointly, and if it looks like it's too much of an octopus, we might split it at some point. But I'm definitely for it, and maybe we don't have to make that decision tonight.
Well, it's Accountability Accreditation Advisory Council, not accountability one and accreditation another one. It's accountability for the accreditation.
Right, and I'm just saying, I'm for that. It just might be a bigger task than we think.
Okay.
But I'm for it.
Okay, Connie?
Is there another word we could use, Harvest, besides accreditation?
You can change it, Ms. Q.
I kind of like the curriculum.
Okay.
To stay with curriculum.
Curriculum Advisory Committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we used to have that, and this, I'm going back many years ago, if Gina, you remember. We always had a curriculum committee.
You okay with that change, Mr. Rolla?
Yeah, I mean, looking at all, what do we have, 2, 4, 6.
Teaching
Every
learning.
one of those is good.
Yeah.
We need every one, but we got to be careful if we put too many. I'd rather have the top 3 this year. Let's say top 3, and we really focus on it, because let's face reality.
All about learning.
The reality is every time, it may be in staff or whatever, it's always the same people.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to burn out these individuals. And yes, we're going to open it up, you know, for teachers or whatever the membership's going to be. But we got to be careful, is it's always the same individuals, and we don't want to get too many. My suggestion would be to look at the top 3 that we feel out of these 6, and let's work on these top 3 the upcoming year. And I don't know if it was Dr. Hyde or Harvest here that said timeline. Well, if we're going to do it, we got to get on it now, because I'm saying we instituted it for the 2018-2019 school year.
Right.
And if we get too many, we're going to drag our feet, and I can tell you, we'll get nothing done. And I can say this from previous experience. So my thing is, what 3? And that's my suggestion, okay?
Maybe it's 2. Maybe it's only 2 this year.
Or maybe 2, but I'm just saying, let's be careful. And
Because it's new.
I'm saying all these are acceptable.
Right,
Okay.
but see, what,
Which ones do we really want to focus on is my thing.
What's the list? I don't have the list.
You don't have the list, so let me go through it. So right now, we have school improvement advisory. Here you go, Dr. Hyde.
It's on the agenda.
I have this here?
It's on the agenda.
It's on the last page of the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
So it seems like you could combine the accreditation, teaching and learning advisory as one.
If your focus on turnaround, which ones would help you get out of turnaround?
Don't you think, Harvest?
Just, point had just been brought up to me. Which one of these is going to help us get out of the situation that we're in?
Climate and culture.
Okay, well, but, you know, I'm just throwing it out there when we start.
yeah, but see, I'm gonna disagree with that. The advisory committees, to me, just me speaking, will carry on the tradition of this district once it is implemented. It ain't about, we have to get us out of the situation we in today about turnaround. Not about a advisory committee is not to get us out of turnaround. It's to advise us to make steps to make sure we don't go back into turnaround. So we're not going to sit here and say, what he's going to do, he's going to get us out of turnaround. The goal for it is not to get us out of turnaround. We got to get ourselves out of turnaround. These advisory committees to help us improve, not to go backwards. That's what the recommendation, these advisory committees are to help us succeed, not to go backwards, or which one is to help us get out of turnaround. If that's the case, we should have been had these advisory committees.
Right, but I mean, so do we want to do, I agree, that's a lot of committees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 committees.
I just put
Right. I'm not
Yeah.
nitpicking anything. So I agree, we need a high school level, school improvement advisory committee, because that's one of our issues that we have at the high school. It's the high school it's gonna always be, because we got two middle schools feed into it, we got 7 middle schools feed the elementaries feed the middle schools, and, we always have those interactions, and I think if we can stay ahead of the curve, with what we'd like to see in the district, I think it's a good idea. Climate and culture is one that needs to happen in this district since day one, since I've been here since day one. We really do need to have an advisory committee to say, hey, committee, what's going on out there? Tell us what's happening. How do we improve it? What do we at the board level need to do to improve this stuff? Give us some advice on how we can make it work. That's what I perceive these committees doing. Am I on the right page with you?
You're
Or
good. You're good. You're great.
So,
And then if you think about teaching and learning advisory committee, we going through that right now. We just talked about that for 2 hours in that back room on different subjects. So, and then if I ain't mistaken, when we was going over the budget, Brandon said he wanted an advisory committee, technology. Ms. Mettler stood in front of us and said she didn't have the data. And I always hear sitting up on this dais, data. We got to go by the data. So I had put technology and data privacy advisory committee. So,
I mean, they may not even be all community
Yeah.
members. They might be who we say from the district level, hey, you know, Ms. Burgos, this is your job, you know, work on something and bring it to us. Tell us what's going on. You know, it might be that simple. It may not be all community members and stuff, but some of these may be.
But it's just, if you just think about what we've been going through, sitting up here, not knowing, and if you have advisory committees to come in front of us, we haven't had BAC to come in front of us, and that's all the schools. We haven't had them. We're working on the budget, so we haven't had them. DAC hasn't came in front of us. We're working on the budget. We can set these committees up, these advisory committees up, to come in front of the board every 2 months, every 3 months, every quarter. They don't have to come every month. But we are the Board of Education of Adams 14, and we can select who we want on the committees and how we want the committees run.
Right. So I think we do that under, not necessarily a study session. We can do it under study session, but we can do it under our board improvement. Figure out what exactly that makeup's gonna look like.
Yeah.
Okay, so we in agreement, all of us, that we're gonna have these advisory committees, and we'll start our work.
I really took to heart Mr. Rolla's comment about not taking on more than we can manage, and I would rather set some of it aside and do a good job with what we start with, and then expand it. Unless we have a high level of confidence that we can jump in and do it all. And I think it's a little intimidating to go from 0 to 6 subcommittees, and I think as I visualize it, and, you know, this is just my visualization of it, but I would think that we would have a board member as a member of each subcommittee. And, you know, that means, you know, more effort on our behalf. And I'm willing to do that, but I'm just want to throw that out there as I'm kind of seconding Mr. Rolla's concern about how much can we bite off right from the get-go here. And, you know, if we were to set up 3 committees, whatever those top 3 might be, I think that would be a fabulous, fabulous start. And, you know, I'd like to hear from the rest of you.
Let's pick 3. 3 is better than none.
Yeah, absolutely.
So pick 3.
Well,
I would say, I thought we were gonna have a study session on these committees. I mean, to try to make a decision what top 3 we want in 10 minutes is not very good. I think you gotta take all 6, and then when we have that study session, then we can decide on what 3 we want. But you come in here and just say, well, because that sounds good, let's do it. But I'm just thinking that we can research these and find out, okay, what do we want for the school improvement advisory committee? What do we want them? I think we have to have some kind of a description of what each of these committees is going to be doing, or what we want from these committees. So my suggestion would be that we set up a study session, put a time limit, 1.5 hours, and go over these with a fine tooth, and then we make our decision on what 3 we want. That's my decision, so.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think we can meet as a board and come up with a mission statement for whatever ones they are. Then you can use that mission statement to put out to whoever we decide we want on these advisory committees, to say, this is our mission here. It's gonna be your charge if you decide to do this. get it back to us.
And I'll try to draft something, much of which may be generic to any other committee that we decide to go with. So we can read that, and you can kind of try it on for size and see what you think how it's gonna feel, how you think it'll go forward.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. So we'll just continue the conversation. So, this is for the agenda on Tuesday. So do we want to add anything to the agenda on Tuesday? We want to have all these named, or what do we want to do for Tuesday?
We can, I was thinking,
Hi, before you guys leave, I just wanted to make sure I'm getting texts and phone messages, trying to figure out kind of the agenda for Monday. I've not been involved at any point. I just wanted to give you guys that heads up. So I have about 18 teachers that have contacted me, but I've not received any information, been involved in any conversation with Dr. Abrego about the non-renewal process. So I just want to make sure that I can get back to the teachers. I have about 18 that have contacted me. I don't know where they're at in the process, but I just wanted to make sure before you guys, because I won't see anybody, if Monday evening is the session to meet with teachers, and if I could get that list from Dr. Abrego so I know who to contact. Right now I have about 18 people, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm not giving the teachers the wrong information. So I just want to put that on your radar. I don't know who the people are that they're meeting with, and that would be helpful for me so that I can contact folks to say, you do need to meet, you don't need to meet, don't need to go to your other job, stay here. So I'm glad to have that conversation with Dr. Abrego. I just haven't had any contact back from my emails to him, just to give you guys a heads up, and that's Monday.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, and that's necessary information for you.
Perfect.
So you can bring it. So, Dr. J, you have the list.
Yeah.
And I believe that that whoever has a notice has received their files, I believe.
Okay.
And so, it's gonna be
I'll
up to
compare
you
my
guys to
list.
figure out who's all gonna be here.
Perfect.
For Monday.
Yep.
And
And
there's
like I
gonna
said,
be-
about 18, and it'll be helpful if I could look at that list to see, maybe there's some people that don't need to come, but I want to make sure they have a little bit of time before they come in on Monday or not, so they can be prepared as well.
Yeah, so right now, they're all invited to come. Whoever wants to come is gonna come. So whatever information you need besides that, they have their files.
Perfect.
So they have all of that information, the same information that we have. We've gone through our stuff and done our stuff, so we kinda understand what's going on.
Perfect.
And we haven't made any decisions on anything yet. We need to hear from the
Perfect.
other side of the story.
Yeah, if I could get that this evening, that would be great, and then I'll contact people tomorrow.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and we could remind her that we also decided to meet at 4:30.
Yeah, we're gonna try to be
So-
at 4:30.
Okay. I'll let folks know at least that are on that list.
So we're gonna try to keep.
4:30?
Yeah.
Will that be enough time for who gets out at 4:15 or
The
middle
ele-
schools?
Yeah, the middle schools will be the later group. I think that's the least number of people I have right now. It's mostly elementary and high school.
Okay.
Total of about 18 right now.
So that should be okay then?
Yeah, high school.
So as
just
long as we do the middle schools,
last.
secondary or third,
Yeah.
okay? So we'll get that, you can get that information to them, to her tonight or tomorrow? Sooner the better?
Perfect, yeah, and I'll call people.
Okay, thank you. So then for the purposes of, Monday, or Tuesday, I mean, what are we gonna do with, the advisory? We wanna just read them all? We wanna just,
Well, yeah, we can
Agree.
read them all because we're going to discuss them all in a study session. We're not going to approve these, we're just going to prove that we'll discuss at a study session, and if we have to add more, we can add more.
we'll add
At the
dates?
study session.
We'll add dates for a study session and stuff on Tuesday?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So
Then
keep them on the agenda as a
Leave them on the
discussion
agenda, please, yes. So then, based on things that happen, we'll decide whether or not we're gonna have an executive session, Tuesday. So that's the agenda.